My name is Aron van Ammers. I'm a CTO and founding partner of Outlier Ventures. I will talk a bit about tokenization, about our vision at Outlier Ventures, about the seed project, which is about conversational user interfaces. So let's go. Yes, so growing tokenized communities. That is really what we're all about. These are the things that we'll be talking about. You'll see them along the way. So tokenization, what is that anyway? It's a pretty common word in the cryptocurrency space as it has become over the past years. It all started with Bitcoin, the first cryptocurrency based on a blockchain. It introduced the concept of a blockchain, which in principle is no more than a data structure, but because of the ingenious ways in which those things were used together and the proof of work algorithm, suddenly you would have the concept of a truly decentralized currency, a digital token of value, where there was no central bank, no central governance, no central organization. No, it was only because of everybody participating, everybody running the code, that there was Bitcoin, a truly digital money. Well, that's of course super interesting. After that, many others. The concept of Bitcoin was copied and variations were created, including the likes of Dogecoin and many other altcoins, as they have been called, which are usually forks of the Bitcoin code, changed a bit, add maybe some branding, maybe some new concept, maybe a new type of consensus algorithm. Interesting experimentation, interesting speculation, of course, also for some. Well, one of the bigger new currencies and in fact tokenized networks that you might have heard of is Ethereum, which is what you can call a decentralized smart contract platform or a decentralized computer. It's a very secure way to run small computer programs that can do well, basically anything you want, but in a very limited fashion and in a very reliable fashion. And they can deal with currency. And after Ethereum, there were many others which try to, and at to this point, still try to improve upon the concept of Ethereum, deal with some of its flaws, make them higher performance, make them more stable, make them less reliant on some of the aspects that Ethereum relies on. So there's a lot of experimentation in the area. But so all of these I call tokenized protocols. Why do I call them tokenized protocols? Because they are open source networks. They're open source code that's developed in an open fashion by many people who are part of the community, that is run by people in the network who run network nodes, who maybe in the case of Bitcoin or other proof of work cryptocurrencies run miners, which do a lot of number crunching to run the verified algorithms of that particular cryptocurrency. So there is a token of value at their core. So on the one hand, this code is all open and anyone can steal it. And in fact, there's no real ownership of the code usually. It's just, GPL license, take it, use whatever you used in whatever way you see fit. Yet you can easily copy the code, but you can't copy the value of that token. You can't copy the community because, if there's 1,000 people developing on Bitcoin and you create, say, Bitcoin Cash, which of course has happened as a fork of the Bitcoin network, you don't automatically have those 1,000 people now developing on the Bitcoin Cash code. And the same goes for Ethereum. So there's, on the one hand, there's the Ethereum code base, which you can now download, run on your machine, and then you have a node on the Ethereum network. And then there's the people who develop that code base. So there's the code is for free, but the value in there, including the actual people working with it and businesses building on it, people building projects on it, you can't copy that. Another way to say, to describe these decentralized systems, which I find helpful, is that they're non-monopolistic incentive systems. Why are they non-monopolistic? Because they are not owned by, say, a Facebook, an Amazon, and IBM, who are doing a lot of good work in open source, as we have seen. But just to define this, there's no single organization that monopolizes these networks. There's usually multiple. There's the individuals, etc., and they are incentive systems. Why are they incentive systems? Because to go back to the very start of this Bitcoin, there's an incentive for people to run lots of powerful computers, lots of powerful mining devices to simply run the SHA-256 mining or hashing algorithm as part of the Bitcoin mining algorithm, which secures this network. They have this incentive to do that. Why would they spend all their energy to build a data center and put it full of these expensive devices? Because they get Bitcoin. So in the protocol, there's a rule that says every 10 minutes or about every 10 minutes, new Bitcoin is created, and whoever wins the mining race for that 10 minutes, and there's much more behind this, gets the Bitcoin. So there's an incentive for people to contribute to the network. In the case of Bitcoin, that is securing currency. In the case of Ethereum, that is securing a world computer. So a more powerful way of running logic and storing data. That's more, far more generic than just I transact the Bitcoin to you. You can do, like I said, you can do basically anything you want on Ethereum. And again, secured by people running nodes, incentivized by something, incentivized by a new ether being printed as part of the code, as part of the algorithm. So non-monopolistic, not owned by anyone specific, an incentive system, people doing stuff to support the network by way of gaining tokens of that network. So tokenized protocols, it's a protocol that has a token in the middle at the core of the system. In the case of Bitcoin, that's a Bitcoin token. In the case of Ethereum, that's the Ethereum token. And there are many, many others with also a digital token at their middle. Now, there's also many other forms of tokenization. You can say, well, I have equity in my company, I have the shares in my company. I can also create cryptographic tokens, and then people can trade them in the same way, and they can go to exchanges and trade them for Bitcoin or trade them for other ways. I can do that with real estate or other real-world assets. There's now recently a trend into crypto collectibles. You might have heard of crypto kitties. So suddenly there's, this virtual item which is unique and scarce, and it's also a cat. Very nice. Many other ways in which you can, tokenize, so sort of split into pieces and make it into a tradable crypto asset. I won't bore you with those today. Today I'm all about these tokenized networks that do something, that serve a purpose, that have a certain a purpose where developers can build things on. Those are the ones I focus on, and especially the communities around them. So these protocols. They're simply, at their core, they're simply a piece of code. But who develops that piece of code? So there's, of course, the core developers who develop that, and there might be multiple groups of core developers, multiple code bases. And then there's, of course, enthusiasts who join on the train, and, they like to use the software and experiment with it. There's corporates who see, hey, this thing is getting serious, as we now see many corporates experiment with their own blockchain proof of concepts. Again, the likes of IBM, you're building your own blockchain stack, and then there's other people building tokenized systems on top of that blockchain stack, which is also interesting. There's academia seeing, driving really the state of the art of the space forward and looking at new cryptographic algorithms, new consensus algorithms. Lots of interesting news there every day. And end users and, of course, speculators in the value of the token who trade in the token, hoping that, it will gain larger adoption, etc. All of these people, these parties, they center around certain protocols. So you can really speak about, well, there's the Bitcoin ecosystem, there's the Ethereum ecosystem, there's, these many other ecosystems of all these people, these communities around these tokenized protocols. And usually they hold some of the tokens. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're not really interested in the financial value of the token. Sometimes they get reimbursed for their their services in the token. I mean, it's very common for token protocols or for people building on Ethereum to reward their developers or people who work at bounties for their systems, like build something or bug hunting or whatever, to get reimbursed in the form of Ether or the token that a particular protocol is building. So all in all, this is a genuinely different economic model than the common joint stock corporation or, say, a limited company to collaborate and align on value. Now, it's new, it's messy, there's a lot of scams too, but that's part of any new development. In general, we at Outlier Ventures, we believe very much in the concept. We see a lot of good happening, and we work to stimulate that and bring the space forward and invest in good tokenized projects that we believe in. So a bit more about how we do that at Outlier Ventures and how we decide which projects are an interesting fit for us and which are not. We have our investment thesis called the Convergence Ecosystem, which can be summarized in this visual. I don't think you can read it all. You don't really need to. Just quickly describe it. We see really this ecosystem of different tokenized protocols and different decentralization technologies combined with things like machine learning, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things to really combine and converge. So at the very bottom of the stack, there's the data collection. You have these sensoring systems, Internet of Things devices who collect data and who bring it to somewhere. You go a level higher, then it's about authenticating, validating, and securing that data. There's various ways to do that and various protocols to do that. Transports, how is that data interacted, over what ways. Then a higher level, once we're able to, we have data that's validated and that can go from one way to another. And there's, each of these concepts has a financial component. And of course, you can trade that data. You can trade those digital assets. And then finally, at the highest level, building on top of all those things, are the processing, analyzing components, which include smart contracts, which include distributed compute, many interesting projects in that area as well. Decentralized machine learning. Also, a lot of interesting developments there. So at Outlier Ventures, we invest in projects that usually match several of the circles in the stack, or are a nice synergy with the existing portfolio that we have. So these are some of the projects that we have the pleasure to work with or having worked with in the past. There's IOTA, which we invested in earlier last year. Fetch AI is about decentralized machine learning and autonomous economic agents. The Seed network, which I will tell a bit more about, and after me, Robert Nielsen, of course, will tell much more about. Sovereign on centralized or self-sovereign identity. So you owning your identity rather than and dealing with organizations rather than organizations owning your identity and you dealing with them. Higher networks, which is about integrating and decentralizing decentralized ways of dealing with data. To summarize it, there's much more to come there. Ocean Protocol, which is about making data tradable, available for AI, again in decentralized fashion. So just to give you an idea of what we do, we work intensively with the teams of our portfolio to help them out in all the capacities that we bring. So a bit more specifically about Seed, which is about conversational user interfaces and the democratization of AI. So we see it really as on one hand, it's a data market and a digital asset market for bots, because in the end, bots are, to an extent, they are data, and they can be executed. When we speak about the definition of, say, a chatbot, that's data, and when you interact with it, that data is being executed upon. And it has a lot of connections with all of the other bits in the whole ecosystem. So of course the lower levels, if you're looking at Internet of Things and your devices in your home, those have and can have conversational user interfaces as well. Your smart fridge or your smart heater, you can talk to them as well. Identity and reputation, very important to have the authentication of bots and have reputation of bots within the system. More on the higher level, smart contracts for the core components of how Seed is built. Centralized machine learning, also very interesting to give access to those machine learning capacities through conversational user interfaces. So all in all, many synergies really. So to go on a bit about these protocols, on one hand, they are something in themselves, but ultimately they only get interesting once people start to build upon them. So they're building blocks. Now, more traditional or non-tokenized software building blocks, I would say, well, Node.js, Ubuntu, MySQL, or even the AI libraries that IBM produces as open source. These are all building blocks. You can do something with them. They're on their own. They're a tool, and you can, as a developer, use that tool to build a useful application that will do something useful with AI, or will make a useful web application, etc. Building blocks to make something useful. Now, for tokenized protocol, that's just the same. It can be used to build things that are useful to end users. So the Bitcoin protocol on its own is interesting, and it secures the Bitcoin network, but it only gets useful for end users once they have a wallet that actually works, once they have a block explorer, when they can actually check that things are the way they should be, once there are payment gateways where people can pay in stores to actually use their Bitcoin exchanges, etc., etc., etc. Now, a protocol is only as useful as the applications built upon it. So as the more applications that are being built, the more useful that protocol is. And that's where you see, for example, Ethereum now. It has a lot of adoption. There's a lot of people building on top of it. There's also a lot wrong or limited or not perfect about Ethereum. But the fact is, there's so much adoption in terms of applications being built on top that is really, a really valuable aspect of the community in itself. So these protocols need people building on them, and they can build on top of each other, and that gives interesting aspects in functional way, because you can use the thing, you can use the services of the lower level protocol, and you can have an economic interaction with the tokens of the lower level protocol. So one example is there's Ethereum, which is the smart contract platform with computer. One example building on top of them is Aragon, which is a platform to run organizations, a quite generic platform. They have their own token to do the incentivization in their system. And then on top of that, there's District 0x, which is a network of specific decentralized markets and communities, again, having their own token, doing the incentivization on their level. So each of these have different tokens and different tokenized systems. Once again, different incentive systems, not monopolized by any individual organization. And now, of course, you can ask me, Aaron, why not use the same token? Why can't we just, use this Bitcoin token for every single system out there? You can. However, there are too many reasons not to do it. There are too many reasons to introduce a new token. These are incentive systems. You can design incentives around token value to a much greater extent if you have control over how that token is created and how that token lives on. So, for example, I cannot decide that I create an application, and if something happens, the user receives one new Ether token. I can't, because the Ether tokens are limited and they're defined by the Ethereum protocol. If I create my own protocol and I call it Aron token, then I can decide that. I have to do that in a good way, and the concepts in which this works well are really evolving, and it's something that At Outlier, we think about a lot and we publish about a lot. But the bottom line is you have control over your incentives. You have control over your monetary policy. How are tokens created? When are they created? And how are they held, etc. Those are really the main reasons to create your own token. So yeah, developers, really important. Steve Ballmer knew it well. Not a proponent of open source, by the way, but I guess you all know this video of him saying, developers, developers, developers. If not, you should watch it and be somewhat horrified. But as Microsoft CEO, he really knew, I need developers to build on my stack to make my technology stack the biggest in the world. You know, it already was, but let's stay the biggest in the world. And I would advise any tokenized protocol to think about it in the same way. So yeah, some things that tokenized protocols can do and need to have in place to attract developers and to make sure that they can build on them in the fastest way. If people don't know how your technology works, or there are no great examples, or they spend 2 days to get it, get the SDK to run, and then still it doesn't work, that's not a good way to attract people. You need good tools, good examples, good educations. You can help with events, with hackathons. And these are all things that we at Outlier help our portfolio companies with to get in place. Yeah, to really make them grow. So finally, zooming in a bit on the seed network, where do developers there come in? Now, of course, as the core protocol developers of the seed protocol, app developers, like how can bots interact with, and how you can things like an app store be built on top of the seed network, other ways for yeah, let's say bot frameworks to interact with the seed network. Those can of course be created, and they will be created by the Seed Vault Foundation, but they can be created by others. And then ultimately, of course, people building bots and people building components of bots, because Seed is all about remuneration for developing those components, and when they're used, get remunerated for them. Compose bots of existing components that have been deployed on Seed. So those are all places where developers are critical. I think I'm through the time, so thank you very much. And maybe now some questions. I saw some things fly by on the chat.
Yeah, hey, thank you very much, Aron. Perfect. Yeah, I see now we are already running out of time, but I would like to mention one. For example, Carlo, he wants to know, like, in what sector do you see the most potential?
Pooh, that's a difficult one. All sectors? Well, there's one thing to say. I think there's a lot of attention for the financial sector, of course, and there is a lot of potential there. But I think the most interesting is actually in non-financial sectors. And I think that the financial sector has gotten the most attention because, it's cryptocurrency, so it's about money, and financial systems. But it's much more interesting once you get to look at the rest of the world.
Okay. Yeah, and thank you. And the next one, I think we can take this to the panel, because this is something from Annette. She wants to know, like, but I just show it here as well. Like, what do you think about FAMGA, like Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Apple, Power acquiring lots of AI companies? So yes, perhaps let me take this to, like, in 30 minutes.
Yeah, I think it's a good one for the panel. I have several things to say about it.
I think this is yes, interesting questions. I think as well, like, we can discuss. So yeah, time is already up, as I see. Thank you very much for your presentation, insights, and yes, happy to like send the presentation then anyway next week for the replay, and talk to you later.
All right, thank you, and thanks for everybody watching.